And okay, I put this clip together, and this is the Siska synchronized rolling team. And if anybody wants to join the team, they're welcome to it. But the whole idea is you don't have to learn to roll to buy a VHF radio. You should actually just go out and buy the radio, and rolling comes next. So if you do want to join the synchronized rolling team, send Alan Camel an email and just let him know. So the goal for tonight is demystifying VHF radios to allow you to make an informed choice. So when you're on the water, you have a VHF radio. First thing I like to tell people is you now belong to a community of boaters out on the water. Channel 16, you can talk to virtually any of the boaters, the Coast Guard, BC ferries, commercial vessels, fishing boats, pleasure crafts, sailboats, anybody out there that's on the water within range and with their radios switched on and tuned to 16. In theory, everybody with a radio should be tuned to 16 and listening to it. That's a requirement of the regulations. What I want to talk about before we get to handheld is permanently mounted radios on board vessels. And just to give you a bit of an idea, the differences between these radios and the ones you have handheld, one is they're connected to power. They're almost certainly these days a DSC radio, and we'll get to what those are later. I don't think radios installed in vessels, they're all DSC these days. They have to be assigned what's called an MMSI number, the Maritime Mobile Service Identity Number. It's a bit like a telephone number for a VHF radio. They transmit at 25 watts of power. They have a high power aerial, which is usually mounted high up on the boat. And this is one of the differences between sitting in a kayak and sitting in a powered vessel. They're likely in a warm cabin. They've got extra lighting. They can reach for their reading glasses. They would have a chart on a chart table in front of them. If they're the skipper, they can hand the helm to someone else and talk on the radio. And they're not really in any risk of capsizing. So very different to what kayakers are faced with on the water. This is the kind of radio that would be mounted installed on a boat. It's like a VHF, it's line of sight. It's not a satellite communications device, except it picks up the GPS position through satellite. It calls digitally on channel 70, and you can get your GPS position, latitude and longitude. I've got LORAN on there, but forget that. LORAN is now virtually obsolete. Here's a sailboat. Whoops. Here's the aerial at the top of the mast. It's 50 foot in the air, 25 watts of power, probably a good range of, say, 15 to 20 nautical miles, depending on the topography that's round about, and lots more range and better reception than you would have in a kayak. Those radios have this Maritime Mobile Service Identity Number. It's called an MMSI. The first three digits, Canada, 316 is the country, so that's Canadian. And the MMSI number is assigned to a VHF DSC radio permanently installed on the vessel. There'll be an auxiliary engine with a battery bank so it can get charged. And an MMSI number has the boat name, the boat type, and the boat owner registered on record. And if you use that for a distress call, the Coast Guard will be able to get the boat name, type, and the registered owner. So, handheld. This is us, this is where we are. Two types, there's a standard VHF, or there's a VHF with what we call digital selective calling. With a handheld, with digital selective calling, you get an MI number. And it's an MI number is different from the MMSI number because now the MI number is not assigned to a vessel. Anybody with a handheld radio can move it between kayaks, loan it to a friend, you go in a dinghy, you can take it on a paddleboard. And so that's how the Coast Guard will differentiate between a distress call from a standard radio, a radio with an MMSI number on a boat, or a handheld with an MI number. Of course, it's low power. Maximum you can get is 5 or 6 watts. You've got a small aerial. You're at water level. The operator, if it's a kayaker like we are, is likely in an unstable position. You're dealing with waves, rain, wind. You might have a paddle in one hand. You may even be in the water. If you've got rain and wind and fog, you might have difficulty reading the screen, and you've probably also got wind in the microphone. So if that microphone has wind in it, the other person will hear that and it will be difficult to hear you on the other end. This is a person in the water. This is off the west coast in the swell. This is the kind of conditions you're probably dealing with if you want to pull your radio out and make a distress call. So portable radio, just got one here. I actually happen to have this particular model. It's an ICOM radio. It's small, it's compact, and usually on the power vessels or a sailing vessel, you'll have one of these on board. If you need to go into your dinghy or go into a life raft, you'll take that with you. You can use it as a backup. And as we said, 5 or 6 watts, small antenna, limited battery life. So the radio attached to the kayak in a waterproof bag, you're probably looking at the fish here. That's Dulcie and Gord, but the radio is on the deck here. This one's in a waterproof bag attached to the deck. That's one option to carry a radio. I tend to put mine in the pocket in my life jacket. I used to use one of these bags, but I don't anymore. I've heard that if it's really sunny and hot, these bags can get steamed up, and then it's like putting your radio into a sauna. So again, pros and cons of anything that how you want to carry it. So if you're buying a radio, first decision to be made is, do I want a standard radio, standard VHF, or do I want a VHF radio with what we call digital selective calling? So I'm going to spend a minute or two now just describing digital selective calling, because I know there's some experienced kayakers on here, but really we aim in this at people who aren't really very familiar with VHF radios. So both these types of radios have all the standard features. You don't have to worry about which ones are these or whether to look for them. They all have volume, they all have squelch, they all have different modes, a battery indicator, a dual watch. You can listen to 2 channels. You can lock the keys. They have different power settings, 1 of 5 or 6 watts for transmission, weather channels. You can scan different channels. And some of them have what's called float and flash. If they fall in the water, then there's a light comes on, flashes. And they also have something called aquaquake. So if the microphone gets wet and gets water in it, and it'll vibrate and shake the water out, and then your voice will be clearer when you're speaking. Personally, I don't like these features because I always wash my VHF radio in fresh water when I use it. And one day I put it onto the countertop at the sink, and when I came back, it was flashing and it was vibrating. And of course, it's using up battery power while it does that. So DSC radios, digital selective calling, all the features as a standard radio with the following additional features. It has an automatic distress button, which you can press for 5 seconds, and it will send a Mayday distress call out with your latitude and longitude position. This is really the real key function for these radios. It sends the latitude and longitude as a digital signal on channel 70. So if you do the radio course, you will be told, do not use voice on channel 70, leave channel 70 completely alone. It has a GPS positioning, just like a cell phone will do for Google Maps, and it gets latitude and longitude. It also will display your speed over ground and your course over ground, and you can enter waypoints and navigate to them. And you can make individual or group calls if you have someone else's MI number. You could call that, it'll beep the other VHF radio, and they will hear that there's a call waiting for them. So a VHF with digital selective calling, it gets an MI number, a maritime identity. It starts with the number 8, 9 digits, and the 8 designates it as a VHF radio. So portable VHF DSC radios are assigned an MI number. If you buy a radio, you have to apply for this number. And I'm told that if you don't program the number into your radio, the distress function won't work. So if you do buy one, get the MI number. It's free. It's from Transport Canada, and you have to program it into your radio. So the VHF, the MI number, if it's not assigned to a specific craft, it's assigned to the radio. The radios can be transferred between craft. And if a Coast Guard gets a distress from an MI number, it knows a number of things. It knows that the Coast Guard will know it's a small craft. It's likely a kayak, stand-up paddleboard, a skiff, or a life raft. They will also know that the radio you're using has a limited range and it has low power. It also has a limited battery life. If they're coming to search for you, you may be hard to spot from a helicopter or a rescue boat. And if it's very likely there could be someone in the water, so there's a potential hypothermia situation. So perhaps a different mindset for the Coast Guard between a call from a MMSI radio to a handheld MI radio. So let's get into considerations for purchasing. Obviously, the size, you don't want one that's too big. Cost seems to be something that everybody's concerned with. But for me, a really big factor is battery life. And it depends on the battery size. And you see the manufacturers will quote a milliamp per hour number, and about 1800 seems to be a minimum number I think you want to go for. Or if they don't quote that, they'll quote hours of operation, which is usually about 11 to 13 hours of operation. So you're looking, if you're buying a radio, you're looking for something with those numbers. There's only one radio, a VHF radio handheld I know that's not waterproof, and that's the HX40 from Standard Horizon. So all the rest are waterproof. I believe all the others float. An important consideration I like is these radios all come with a lithium-ion battery, but I also have a battery cradle, and I carry alkaline batteries as a backup. So not all radios have this. Some do, some don't. But if I find a radio, I can get the battery cradle, and if that battery goes flat, I can just switch out the battery pack and put the cradle in with the alkaline batteries. Newer ones these days, a lot of them are now using USB charging, and you can charge your radio from if you got the USB, you can use a power pack in the field to recharge your radio. Or you've got this lithium-ion battery using a 120-volt plug-in. So, DSC radios. So let's concentrate on these. They tend to be larger in size. They cost more. They use more battery power. The screen can be more difficult to read because there's a lot more information on the screen. They have soft keys, so you can scroll through various menus. If you're putting waypoints in, you need to practice it all the time if that's what you want to use it for. You can put waypoints in, but I think a GPS would be a lot easier to use. And the digital signal has about 20 to 25% more range. So if you do press the distress button, it will go a little bit further than the voice would be on a normal channel. So I found that through the time here, that if you go to the power squadron that do the ROCM courses and search and rescue personnel, they always seem to recommend purchasing the DSC radio, and that's for their ability to transmit the GPS latitude and longitude signal in a distress situation. However, these people are often sailors and powerboaters in nice warm cabins with auxiliary lighting, crew that can handle the boat while somebody else uses the radio. And I don't think they sometimes realize kayakers are in a wet, cold, rough water environment, waves splashing over them, poor light conditions, trying to stay upright, holding onto their paddle with one hand. So I like something that's quick, easy, and I don't have to wear my reading glasses to use it, and I can use it very quickly. So my suggestions, and this, you've got to think about this, but I often say beginner kayakers who paddle in groups in local waters with more experienced paddlers may be better off just buying a standard radio. So there'll be a number of radios in the group. Often the group is listening to the weather, or it's talking backwards and forwards on a talking channel, and that's generally what is used. And so lower cost, better battery life, easier to use, standard radio. Experienced paddlers who paddle exposed coastlines, I feel, should have a number of VHF DSC radios in the group. And so some may have standard VHFs, some may have VHF DSCs radios. So this is what I do. For local paddles with friends, I take my standard VHF and it's attached to my life jacket. If I'm leading a local Siska paddle, I have a standard VHF radio attached to my life jacket, and I take my VHF DSC radio in my day hatch. So I can get to it quickly and easily if I need to. But the radio that's switched on is a standard radio, and I find I get better battery life from that. If I'm paddling in exposed West Coast conditions, I'll have the DSC radio in my life jacket, and I take the standard radio as a spare. So that's how I personally handle it. If you want to buy one radio, one or the other, you're going to have to make a choice. So there's two main manufacturers of the radio. One is ICOM, and the other is Standard Horizon. ICOM in the past has had a reputation for higher quality, generally more money, and Standard Horizon has a 3-year warranty, has had better prices, and so a Standard Horizon is often considered better value. But the last year or two, I feel the quality of these two are about to equal. So ICOM's sort of living on its reputation. Standard Horizon has improved their reputation. So types of radios then. Let's talk about DSC. Standard Horizon has an 8X HX890. It's DSC, and I checked today, you can buy one for $270 at Spencer's Marine, Harbour Road in Sydney. I looked at MEC for one of these quite a few months ago, and their price was $350. I don't think they would sell very many of them at that price. They advertise 11 hours of battery life, and it does come with an alkaline battery tray. The ICOM model, this is their latest one, and I just saw it today. It's the ICM94D with DSC, but it's also got AIS, which is Automatic Identification System. And certain boats out there, certainly the commercial boats, will have an AIS signal attached to their VHF radio. And with AIS, it'll come up on your screen and show you the positions of these boats. Don't get caught up in this. I don't think it's really a good thing for kayakers unless you really want to get into the nuts and bolts of it. But it's just that the icon has the AIS function now. Looking at a standard radio, standard horizon, one of the favorite ones that the Siska paddlers use is the HX150, which is now obsolete. So the next model up is the HX300. 800 milliamp hours for the battery. It's got a USB connector. You can get a battery tray for alkaline batteries. And today, this one was $190 at Spencer's Marine. Just out of interest, this HX150, this is the one that Alan Campbell uses, Jenny Sutton uses, Delcy McClellan uses, and quite a few others. So a lot of the more experienced Siska paddlers actually go out there with just the standard radio, because you're using it all the time and you're looking for the battery life. The ICOM radios, I think the IC-M25 is about the nearest one. It's 11 hours of battery life. It's $175, but it doesn't come with the battery case. So all you've got is the lithium-ion battery. There's a couple of others that ICOM produce. The IM37 is more of a commercial grade. It's got 2350 milliamp hours, an optional battery case, but I believe it's going to be quite expensive. Certainly, you're going to pay probably $50 or $100 more to get the extra milliamp hours here. The ICM73 is a 200 milliamp hours, doesn't have a battery case, but it does have noise cancelling. So if you have wind in your microphone, or you have some noise on the signal, it tends to take out noise and make your voice clearer as well. That will cost more too. So I think for kayakers, you're looking at maybe the HX300 or the ICOM M25, or if you want to go with the DSC, then the two I mentioned previously. So for a standard radio, I would choose one that's reasonably priced, concentrate on the milliamp hour rating around 1800s, and if you can, look at the optional battery tray with a USB charger. And if you like the look and feel of it, go for it. Other suppliers in Victoria are Trotac and Anchor Marine. I believe Harbour Chandlers in Nanaimo sell VHF radios and often have sales. And Steveston Marine on the mainland also often put sales on. So questions, anybody, or any input from people? I don't necessarily expect everybody to agree with me, but can anybody add to that? Any experiences?
Just a question in terms of distance. It's line of sight. So if there's an island between you and the mainland or other, VHF radios, you are no longer in contact with them?
Very likely. You might find the signal goes around or goes over the top, but it won't be as strong and it won't go as far. So you're really looking probably at about 5 to 6 miles. On a good day, flat water, you might get 7 or 8 nautical miles. Yeah, and of course the thing is that you can hear the weather forecast and you can hear people transmitting to you, but that doesn't mean to say that when you use your VHF radio, the Coast Guard can hear you from wherever you are. You may not be able to reach a Coast Guard station. So often you might end up in a situation where another boat picks up your call, and if it is a distress call, that other boat would then have to relay that distress call to the Coast Guard.
I would have a question as well. In my experience, the antenna actually has proven to be a very potentially fragile part of the radio, specifically as many kayakers carry it on their PFD, and so the antenna gets in contact really quickly and can potentially break. What is your experience with that part and to potentially get spare parts? Because also when I recall correctly, getting a spare antenna can actually also be quite costly, from my experience.
Interestingly enough, I think it was Gary Jacek who wrote an article on antennas in the Siska newsletter about 5 or 6 months ago. And he addressed that particular problems. And one of the main causes of problems with antennas is that you need to unscrew them and clean the connections and keep the connection really clean. But he did also mention that the antenna can get damaged, and often, well, if it is damaged, would need replacing. I'm not sure, I've never had to replace one actually. Mine always behaved themselves. So I know there's an ICOM dealer in Vancouver, and if you go on an ICOM or Standard Horizon website, you could probably order direct from them, and they would just courier it to you. I don't know what the cost would be, but certainly if you suspect your antenna, you should be replacing it.
Edgar, if I could just say, I think my antenna on my ICOM radio actually just came unscrewed on a trip that I was on, and I was able to, in between trips, go into a supplier in Campbell River, and the guy sold me an antenna for $20 and then replaced his own stock. And so that was really helpful. And also I've been at a campsite where I found an antenna on the ground. So I know I'm not the only one whose antenna has just come unscrewed, and you just go to take it out of your pocket and antenna's gone.
I wonder if it's worth every so often then you just check it's tight enough. Obviously.
I do that now.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
maybe glue, I don't know. Can you glue it so that it will never come off?
There's a product called Loctite that you can put on threads that you can still unscrew the threads, but it helps to keep them unscrewing. It's kind of like a bit of a paste. So you might, if you talk to one of these hardware stores, they may be able to suggest something like that, but I don't know if I'd recommend it particularly. I don't know if the threads actually make the connection.
Beeswax works well.
Ah, okay. That's something we've learned today.
Edgar, do you want to unshare your screen just so we can see everybody? If you're finished?
Sorry, say again, Kirsten?
Can you unshare your screen and then we can see everybody?
Ah, hang on.
You're done?
That's what the problem is. Okay, yes.
Great.
There you
There.
go.
That's
Hey, sorry,
Can I have a question? Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay. I have this 870 Standard Horizon 870. I bought it a year and a half ago. I took the course and all that, and then I went back to work, and of course I've completely forgotten really how to confidently use it. Well, one of my main concerns was you mentioned this waterproof thing here that you don't use anymore. So do you know how waterproof this is? Like if I flip and do I still have a radio? Or it's a Standard Horizon 8 HF, it's 870, the 870 model.
It's going to be waterproof, but when they advertise it, they'll say to a certain depth for a certain length of time. So you'd have to go on to their website and see what they actually claim, but it's probably waterproof to about 3 feet for 30 minutes or something like that.
Okay.
So you should be good, but you never know with these things. Sometimes I find VHF radios notoriously unreliable.
Okay. I have another question, and I heard you say you wash it in the clear. So that how do you wash these things? You just run it under the tap, or
Well, I take it in the shower with me and, soak it up. No, no, just
Oh,
kidding. Just don't do that. But if I've been on the water and it's been in my life jacket and my life jacket didn't get wet, I
Yeah.
won't wash it.
Okay.
But if I've been in the water and there's salt water in the Keys, I want to wash the salt water off,
Yeah.
and shake it and just let it dry.
And so these things, which this bag here that I purchased I purchased it separately, but you really don't recommend that then? You could have a silicone bag in there or something like that, or unless if the radio is nice and dry to begin with, you wouldn't put it in there because it would jeopardize the longevity of the radio, I guess.
Well, see, I've decided personally not to use that bag.
Yeah.
If you talk to Jenny Sutton, she
Yeah.
will tell you absolutely use the bag. So it's a personal choice.
Yeah.
Maybe use that, but if it's on a really hot day and it's on the deck and it's 30 degrees and the sun's shining on it, maybe don't put it in the bag.
Yeah. Okay. I have to think about that. I really want to take the course that you're going to offer next Thursday. I didn't read the email yet, but hopefully I'll get on the waiting list. Thank you.
So on Thursday, the course is full, but go on the calendar, sign up, and you'll be put on the wait list for the next course.
Okay.
So if your
Yeah.
name's there, you'll be the first. You'll be
Yeah.
already registered for the next one.
Thank you, Edgar.
Okay. Anybody got any insights to share? Yeah. Who is it? Jerry? Do you want to go ahead?
It is Jerry from Maple Bay. So my pals and I have really been looking, we're pretty experienced kayakers, and we all pack VHF radios, and we've been looking at these SATCOM things, and the Garmin InReach and iSpots, and mainly for emergency use, but also for communication. And my pals will all carry smartphones. Excuse me. My experience on the West Coast has been I can pick up a VHF weather forecast pretty much anywhere on the West Coast of Vancouver. But I'm not so sure about smartphone, or how do you tie all those in, Edgar, on a kayak trip?
So the first thing is that the weather forecast on the VHF radio isn't really a forecast for inshore waters where kayakers are. It's a forecast more for sort of offshore coastal waters, and it covers a big area. So you have to take that with a grain of salt. So obviously the best weather forecast you can get, I think, is using sail flow or predict wind off your iPhone, if you have it with you. And if you're in a remote area, what we do in the groups that I paddle with, we always take an InReach. And on the InReach, you can text back and forth. And we have somebody in town send us the sail flow or predict wind weather forecast texted on the InReach. So we're actually getting the equivalent of a weather forecast that you would get on your iPhone, but it's being texted to us on the InReach. Now, there are places around where you can surprisingly get a cell phone signal. And one of them is Hot Springs Cove, because there's, I don't know if you've been up there, where you can get a cell phone signal there? Because there is an a First Nations village there. I think it's a summer village, but they put a cell tower in. And we were there one day, and the VHF weather forecast said 15 to 25 knots. And it didn't look 15 to 25 knots when we were on Half Moon Bay. We were looking out. So I pulled the cell phone out. I got the cell signal, and the sail flow forecast for inshore said 5 to 15 knots. So if we didn't have the sail flow forecast, we wouldn't have gone. But we did go, and we had certain points. We would leave the bay, make a decision, get down to Raphael Point, make a decision. And once we passed Raphael Point, we kept going. And we had a nice paddle that day. The conditions were fine for paddling. But if we'd listened to the VHF weather, we wouldn't have moved. And the other interesting thing that day is it was a day where we couldn't really see the coastline because of fog and mist. And somebody put into the VHF DSC radio, they put a waypoint for Raphael Point. And once we got to Raphael Point, we couldn't see it, but the VHF radio, DSC radio, told us we were there. Then we kept going. And Judy was on that trip too, I believe. Judy Martin. Nod your head, Judy. Yeah, you were on that. So yeah, but if you're remote, I'd go in reach and have a kayaking friend text you the weather forecast.
Yeah, well, it's just good advice not to listen to the wind predictions on the marine radio, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Around the West Coast anyway.
Okay, yeah. Anyone else?
Hello? Hello?
Okay.
I wanted to go back to that business of the antenna. That article that you're talking about is extremely good, because he goes into detail on how to discover whether the antenna that you have is actually broken. And it's the way he feels it, or this is or that. And he talks all about being able to get an antenna pretty well for any radio that's a generic one, like the other person was talking about that bought one for $20.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm not sure if you could maybe say again the person's name, and maybe this newsletter, is that still able to get someone to get access off our website?
I think, Kirsten, do you know? I think you can get all the newsletters off the website.
I would guess that you can, but I've never tried, so I'm not sure. I'm guessing that you would be able to. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Gary Jasek that I believe wrote it.
Okay. It was excellent.
Well, we can just email him and ask him which month that was.
Yeah, or I'll ask Alan Campbell, because Alan knows everything.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean that in a good way.
Oh, absolutely. I would say the same thing.
And then we've got somebody, it's your name's Bakers, but I think, is that your surname?
Yeah, that's right. It's Ian.
Ian, that's it. Yeah.
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 Edgar. I've had a Standard Horizon, the old HX370S, for about 10 years, still going strong, the standard radio. And I've had my HX870 DSC for 3.5 years, and it's died. What I have is this radio with the accessories that you or somebody can have. I'd be willing to donate it complete with manual. I'm only doing local paddles now, so I'm quite happy with the standard. I've also got a Cobra standard too as a backup.
Okay. Well, if anybody wants to take Ian's offer up on that, it's interesting because I did a VHF for kayakers course about 1.5 years ago. 2 people in the course had the HX, the 870 or 890. They both complained about battery life.
It wasn't so much a battery life thing as I've got the spare alkaline battery pack with it as well, but I've only used it, for local paddles. So battery life has not been an issue for me, but it's just died.
Okay. So that does remind me of one point. If you do put the alkaline batteries in, most of the radios operate on low power only. They will not operate on high power. So that's still fine if you're in a group of paddlers talking to each other. Anyone else? Questions? Anything to add? Jerry again.
Edgar, Judy here.
Oh, Judy.
Yeah,
okay.
Judy. Edgar, I have a question for you. Have you ever tested the DSC? I don't mean in a real life situation, but have you ever tested it just to see what and how?
No. You mean pressing the button for 5 seconds? Because there is a test in the manual, isn't there?
Edgar, it's Judy. It's Judy here, Edgar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're breaking up, actually.
Yeah.
You need to call me on your other radio. So no, I haven't done the test.
So Edgar, I don't know if you can hear me. I think this isn't working very well.
Yeah, your voice is coming and going.
Judy, try turning your video off. So you just have voice. You try stopping your video. Well,
Yeah,
what's-
my I don't know whether it's my iPad. This is just not responding.
yeah. Can you turn your video off?
Or put your question in
Sorry.
the chat, Judy.
Yeah.
So while Judy's doing that, I think, Jerry, did you put your hand up?
Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Edgar. This is a bit off topic, but since we're talking about power consumption on over multi-day trips and that sort of thing, have you had any experience with solar power panels, that sort of thing, to produce power or charge an extra battery on trips?
I've not used solar, but I've taken those battery packs, and they say that the battery pack will charge your. Well, actually, I think it's your cell phone. It will charge 3 times. I'm not sure how much it will charge a VHF radio, but I'm usually, if I'm on a trip, I'm usually pretty. I don't use it very much because I'm trying to preserve the battery life. So I've never actually run the battery down on a trip yet. If the group's close by and everything's fine, I switch the radio off.
Regarding recharges, I actually got myself one of these portable little solar panels from, of course, I can't remember the brand name now, but it's one of these little portable solar panels that did a good job to just recharge my phone and other electronic devices while camping. And I found that was always a good backup to have with me when being out there for a while, because they don't wait much and they recharge rather quickly, actually. Some of them have integrated batteries.
Where did you get it, Denise?
Mine, I got it from an outfitter actually in Ontario. I ordered it online, but let me quickly double check the brand. It's just completely, and I also have to remove my cat, sorry. To quickly look it up again. It was something with fire or something. You can get them in different versions.
So while Denise is doing that, I just want to say, I really like doing this in a group setting in the classroom, because then it's more interactive. With the Zoom, it's like I have to go through all this information and then we have the chat at the end. So apologize about that, but I think it's just a function of Zoom. It doesn't feel as interactive and as cozy as it does in a classroom setting.
Yeah, that's true.
Any other questions or comments?
Would you suggest, as it has been suggested to me, that each time you begin your experience on the water, that you check in with the Coast Guard to see if, just as a check? so that to see whether they can hear you. And apparently they don't mind that happening. I haven't taken up on his advice to do that. And when I was taking a power squadron course, they also said that that was a good practice.
I'm not sure what to say. I think you'd have to ask the Coast Guard. We always do a radio check between the paddlers who have radios, so then you know your radio's working.
The only problem is if two people are going out or three people and you have one radio.
Yeah, do a radio check. They don't like you doing it on 16. They like you doing it on 83A, 83 alpha, because that's their kind of channel just for chatting backwards and forwards.
Perfect. Okay. And we're in your course on Thursday, so that there'll be more about that kind of thing on Thursday.
Sure. Yeah. That's a good point. If you were by yourself,
yes,
going out on your own, and you wanted to do a radio check, do it with the Coast Guard on 83 alpha.
I think it was Willie who was telling me that's what he does, but I wasn't sure what channel. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think he does it when he's going out on his own.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So he's going to. Yeah. You could also check on another boat on channel 16. I've heard people say, radio check. Anybody who can hear this on 16, please respond.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Jury again.
Yeah, thanks for your patience, Edgar. So local marine traffic is usually on a certain channel on your VHF, and those can be different channels depending on where you are. Is there a source where we can determine where local marine traffic channels are used in different areas around the island, or would you know? Or?
I could probably dig something up. Usually, I don't know if you just typed in VHF channels on a Google search or something. I bet you probably get something. But if you don't, if you send me an email, I'll see what I can find.
Your habit is to just contact them on 16 and then jump to an agreed channel.
If I'm what I have done, if I'm around here and I'm concerned about ferries or commercial traffic, I call Victoria traffic on channel 11. And the ferries and the commercial listen to 16 and 11. But there's this thing where because it's the emergency and hailing channel, that it's nice to stay away from 16 if you can. But I believe channel 11 is here. Victoria Harbour might be something else. Comox might be something else. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I actually recall from my radio certificate course that it was advised to not do a radio check on channel 16 if applicable, and they recommended channel 83A, but I never tried it. It's just some on my notes that I still have 83A for a radio check with the Coast Guards, but out of the emergency channel.
Yeah, so 83A is if you call the Coast Guard, they'll often tell you switch to 83 alpha, because that's their talking channel, chatting backwards and forwards. So yes, that's, if you want to call them directly, call them on 83A. So you don't have to use 16.
The ferries have their own channel. Is it 17 that they monitor? So you can not be on 16, but kind of let them know if you're crossing somewhere?
Channel 11 is Victoria traffic, and the ferries will be listening to channel 11.
Okay. For some reason, I thought they had their own, but they just listen to 11?
They might have their own between the ferries, I don't know, but for sure the ferries listen to 16 and 11. And if you turn your radio to 11 when you're on the water, you will hear Victoria traffic talking backwards and forwards to all the commercial traffic. They're all reporting in when they reach certain points. So Victoria traffic have them on radar, and they know there's reporting in points that they have to, tell Victoria traffic when they get there.
Right. Judy, did you want to, I see you've got your iPad up there. Do you want to try asking your question again?
Sure. I've actually moved to my laptop, which is a little better. So Edgar, my question was, have you ever just tested your DSC just to see what the response is? Just noting it's a test, but just to see how it goes.
Well, you're not allowed to press the 5-second button because then it's a proper DSC and they will act accordingly. But
right, okay.
I've read the manual and there is some function in there where it says you can do a kind of little tests to just check a few things, but I've never done it. I've always just assumed that this thing is going to work.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
Now, the other thing that's interesting is somebody said to me once, how long does it take after you press that button for the distress for the helicopter to arrive? And I've heard lots and lots of distress calls on the water, and I've heard my radio go off with a beep, 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 which tells you there's a distress call coming. And the first thing that the Coast Guard do is get on voice and talk to the person and find out, is it a genuine call? They want to know more information. But what they do have is they have the latitude and longitude. But I still don't think if you press that button, somebody still wants to talk to you or talk to somebody in the area because they don't have enough information.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I also have a bit of a random question, and it connects a little bit to what Gary said earlier about all the devices we have available these days, like a Spot and a Garmin Research and or InReach, like all the safety backups, and seeing that kayakers also, when we are on multi-day trips, we spend a considerable amount of time on land, maybe doing hikes, go exploring. And I was always wondering how we could actually use a marine radio as a safety backup for this kind of activity, as well as there's any kind of channel, depending where you are, like for the forest roads, whatever, that you can also express an emergency signal when you actually on land, so not necessarily marine.
I believe if you have a marine radio with a marine operator certificate, you're actually not allowed to use it on land. I believe there's another course for operating a land-based radio. Having said that, I've often gone out and hiked trails on the coast, down in Souk, Aylett Farm to Iron Mine Bay. It's pretty remote. There's lots of scrambling and tree roots, and you often don't see people. And I've actually seen a cougar on that trail. And so when I go hiking down there, I take my VHF radio, I take an air horn, and I take bear bangers, because there could be cougars or bears there, or you could hurt yourself. But if you tripped and hurt yourself, even though it wouldn't technically be illegal, I would use my VHF radio to call a boat out in the Wandafuka Strait and ask them to get help. And I'm sure they're going to help you, not come running down to give you a fine for using your radio. So I think if you're in a coastal area, take your marine radio with you.
Yeah, that's what I always assumed. I was just always wondering if there's actually a way to find out what kind of emergency land channels there are that we could access from our marine radio as well, so that we know we go camping somewhere super remote, somewhere up north, and be like, okay, but while I'm camping, these would be the channels I could actually call in, even with my marine radio, to call in for help if needed.
Well, I think you would need to take an InReach or a Spot, because they have the distress button and it's all satellite. So now taking a marine radio into the bush, it's only going to transmit 5 or 6 miles, or it may not even transmit very far because of mountains and valleys. So on land, in a remote area, you need an InReach or a Spot, or a satellite radio, but that's pretty expensive.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Anyone else? Questions? insights? Okay, are we done, Kirsten?
Yes, I think we're done. I think that was very good. Thanks,
Hey,
Edgar,
hey.
for another great presentation and a lot of useful information. And I know that decision of whether you buy just the standard VHF or one with DSC, and my partner went out and bought the DSC because he was told that that's the, was the latest and greatest. And then he found out it was all the things that Edgar said, complicated to use, the battery life wasn't so great. So when I bought a radio, I got the standard one. So now we have one of each, which I think is probably a good way to go. So thanks for covering all those aspects, and hopefully people will have more information if they're buying a radio. And yeah, look forward to your workshop on Thursday. And as Edgar said, if you're interested in all, don't let the fact that it's full stop you from signing up, because we're if we have enough people, we'll run another course after the one on Thursday. So thank you all for coming and participating. It was really great to see everyone, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Okay,
Thanks, Edgar.
great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Bye.
Edgar.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Bye.
Edgar.
Bye.
Oof. So Kirsten, are you just going to hang around a little bit and
I can do, yeah. Oh, I've got to stop the recording.
okay.